All right, it's May, and we know college football is a little slow. So a lot of sports media outlets are using the University of Colorado and Coach Prime as kind of a catalyst to get more clicks in this offseason. We'll talk about that and more on this episode of Alpine Garage Sports. Well, I'm going to take a little bit of a different line on this. You've seen some other media outlets, or I should say some other Colorado-based media outlets, really get upset about this article, and I can understand why. I honestly can. Also in the forums, The Athletic is getting roasted in the Colorado forums because they wrote an article, specifically Max Olson, who is the reporter, wrote an article that is named "What Happened to Deion Sanders' Colorado Castoffs, Revisiting a Record-Setting Exodus." So obviously, this is about the 2023 roster flip that happened at University of Colorado. Now, first off, I want to say this. I have no ill will towards The Athletic or Max Olson. I've read their articles before, and I honestly think that some of their articles are well written. I'm trying to figure out for myself whether or not I'm going to be completely outraged by this. So I went and actually read the article, and by looking at it, I can understand why Buff Nation is in an uproar, because it's basically just a collection of ex-Colorado athletes that were part of this turnover that are now talking about their experiences that happened during the roster flip. And some of those included meetings with Coach Prime and the fact that it felt cold, or the fact that they were walking up and down the hallways and noticed that people were in line waiting to talk to their coaches, and getting cut out of group chats and getting locked out of the facilities, things like that. And I don't want to undermine any of the athletes and their stories, because obviously these are young men being the operative word here, that are kind of learning the intricacies of the new college football. And really, this isn't new. This has been going on in college football since day one. But it's amplifying over the past few years because of the transfer portal and rules coming out, NIL, these kind of things. And those rules also include a new coach's ability to come into a program and turn over a roster. And they're having to go through that, and they're telling their personal stories, and they have the right to do that. This is the United States. If you want to talk about how you feel about things like I'm doing right now, you can do that if you want to. And folks that don't want to hear it can tune out. You would think that a national publication like The Athletic would try to balance it out somehow. Balance it out with maybe some players that are still here, or maybe get Coach Prime's opinion on the subject, or maybe even, like I said, reference a past article, which is where I think they could have probably done a more balanced job and probably even talked about past work that I thought was pretty good. And what I'm talking about specifically is there was an article written in The Athletic by Max Olson back on May 19th, 2022. So long before Coach Prime ever came to the University of Colorado. And it actually spelled out, honestly, it spelled out the opportunity that this was going to happen. Okay. Now, not specifically Coach Prime, because nobody knew that was going to happen, right? But the fact that the way that college football is progressing since 2019, actually really since 2017, 2018, was going to get to the point where the roster flips were going to start getting immense. Okay. Now, this article that I'm specifically talking about is called "In College Football's Next Roster Flipping Era, New Rules Will Only Ramp Up the Turnover," written by Max Olson on May 19th, 2022. It starts out talking about Lincoln Riley at USC, because Lincoln Riley had just taken over USC, come from the University of Oklahoma, which I know very intimately, and went through and did what at the time was a huge roster flip, which is about 28 people. Used the rules for new head coaches coming in, being able to turn over a roster. And also at the time too, there was a new rule that had basically waived the 25 roster limit that you could bring people in. So he was kind of combining a bunch of rules and doing a big roster flip. And so there's a lot of Coach Riley quotes in here, specifically one that I thought was interesting, which would have been a great quote and a great opportunity in this article to quote, "Hey, these players had this experience. This is the first time we've really had players come to us and talk about their experiences. What happens when a team is turning over a roster? It's probably not pretty, right?" So here is a quote that was in the Athletic article in 2022 from Lincoln Riley saying, "We obviously forced some attrition here." So you can already see there that we knew ahead of time, and all of us knew that because we saw this happening, and the Athletic reported on it. that Lincoln Riley even said they forced people out, right? Everybody is in that position because this is a business and you have to take, coaches don't get 10 years anymore to create a program. They don't get the four years to kind of get the players that are already committed to the university out and start recruiting their own players. I mean, that's at least 4 years right there in most cases. They don't get that. They get 2 years. And if they don't produce in 2 years, and I would say probably at the max they get 4 years, you can't do that. You can't do that without turning over the roster in some cases. You certainly can't do it without turning over a coaching roster. And so these coaches are trying to do good by the university. They're trying to keep their contracts. They're trying to keep their coaches paid as well. And so just like any business, and a new CEO comes into a business, a lot of times you see that there's going to be turnover. They want to bring their own people in. They want to change the culture because the culture may not be productive to a profit. Right? So in this particular case, the same thing happened. And The Athletic is talking about it. They talked about USC and its 22 roster flips at the time, which ended up being, I think, closer to 28. And the fact that Washington State, LSU, and every other Power 5 program at the time, except for 2, had double-digit roster flips. And here's a quote from Max Olson from this 2022 article. The new leader of the Trojans didn't wait a year for his first full recruiting class to begin transforming his team. That's not how it works anymore. He's trying to construct a college football playoff caliber roster as quickly as he can. His staff has aggressively recruited the transfer portal and taken advantage of a unique loophole to load up on newcomers. Now, the loophole that he's talking about, first of all, this article was relating to the 25-man roster limit where you could bring in a limit of 25 players. So that was exhausted. That was waived. And then at the same time, there's also a rule in the books that's stating that a new first-year coach coming in can do some roster flipping. And so combining those two, that's what Lincoln Riley did and many other coaches did to try to turn a team into a winning team. Then he went on to quote, if a player hasn't played or developed much in his first few years in a program, why wouldn't a coach seek a better, more proven replacement? And here's the difference. Those coaches have no obligation to help the player stay on scholarship. And then here is his final quote of that 2022 article. Clearly, these leaders believe in the benefits outweigh the consequences. Recruits end up with more FBS options. Coaches get their fix for the challenges of roster management, and the players who get run off take pride in knowing that they help their program get better faster. So this would have been a great article to probably connect to that, saying this is what it looks like when a roster is flipped. It's not pretty. It never is. Like I said before, it happens in every part of business anywhere, but not publicized. It's just an ugly part of how businesses can stay afloat. And college football and other sporting programs really aren't any different. Now, this video was not made to call The Athletic a hypocrite. That's not what this is about. But to say that I think that they missed an opportunity to reference an earlier piece that kind of explains what's happening here was a big miss, and I think that's what set Buffs fans afire. You can tell in this offseason that a lot of media outlets are kind of riding the Buff and Coach Prime train for clicks, and it's only going to get more interesting. That is a wrap from Alpine Garage Sports. I hope you found this video interesting or informative. Please subscribe to the channel and leave a like and your comments down below. I will always reply to every comment that's put on every video that I make. I love the interaction. That's the whole reason why I do it. And we will see you in the next video.